us back to the country. So I think you're allowed to vote, but you got to come home to do it until the government creates the opportunity to do it remotely. Christine, your question in terms of where do we go from here? Look, we still remain committed to the CPP. I still think it's the right vehicle through which we can be successful and win President Weah. We've been vindicated, again, no surprise, because we know we didn't change anything. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. Let's wait and see what our colleagues do. I think they should apologize, not to me, but to the Liberian people, because they brought disrepute to the CPP. And so they owe the Liberian people, I think, an apology. Let's see what they do, and based on that, we'll decide how to react. But let's be patient. Let's calm down. Let's see what reaction we get from the accusers. And on the question of VP, look, I would love to have a woman as a VP candidate, but we got to go through a process. I believe in a process. We'll define the criteria for the vice president, the caliber person, the experience. The constitution requires that the president and vice president cannot come from the same region, the same county. So those basic criteria got to be in place. We will appoint a committee to go ahead and do vetting to identify potential VP candidates. And my hope is that we'll appoint a committee of eminent Liberians. It will be public. The vetting process will be public. The criteria will be public, and they will identify 2 or 3 people that I can pick from. And I'm hopeful. I'm prayerful that 1 or 2 or even all 3 of those choices might be women, because I think that will be a good thing for our country to have the tradition of a woman being either at the top or the number 2 on the ticket. But it's not something we should guarantee, or I can guarantee, and I shouldn't. We should go based on the process, based on the criteria, and pick the best person to become the vice president. All right. Thanks.
You hear me? Yeah, so one major problem for Liberia is the fact that we depend solely on foreign aid. I just want to know, what are your plans to mitigate such?
Okay. All right. I was able to. So my question is, Mr. Cummings, how will you gather, evaluate, and act on information for policy decisions? I hope that was clear.
How will you gather and evaluate and act on policy information? Let's be clear, please, Fatima, so that we can help the guests answer the question.
Yeah, I said. Yeah, I said how. Okay, I said, how will he gather, evaluate, and act on information for policy making and decisions?
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. So Lamos had a question on foreign aid and on dependency, and somebody needs to mute their phone. Yeah. So Lamos asked a good question, and there is, for some Liberians anyway, I try not to generalize on Liberians because I think we're sometimes too hard on ourselves. But for many Liberians, there is a dependency mentality, not just on foreign aid, on foreigners, but on each other, and so we have a challenge there. But specifically with regards to foreign aid, we have to focus on, mobilizing domestic resources. I've talked about the fact that we need to increase our national budget, our revenue. It's been hovering around $500 million, $550 million for a long time. With that amount of money, you cannot develop anything. I mean, to be honest, right? I mean, at the margins, you can do stuff. We need to double and triple that amount over time. And I've said our goal should be in 3 to 5 years to get that number to $1 billion. And I believe that's possible, closer to 3 than to 5, right? In fact, right prior to the Ebola crisis in 2014, the former government looking at a projection of getting to $679 million United States dollars for the annual budget. And then Ebola hit. So that they were approaching $700 million already. But the point is, to reduce our dependency, we've got to mobilize our own domestic resources, get our budget to where we can actually start to develop the country, and then depend less on to help us. Look, we will not refuse foreign help, and we should not. But we need to direct it. We need to say, if you want to help us in healthcare, this is where we want you to help us in healthcare. If your government is interested in helping us in education, this is where we want you to help in education. This is why we need a national development plan where we make choices, we prioritize. And yes, if the Americans, the Europeans, the Chinese, they want to help us, we need to be very clear where we want to help in the different sectors. But the most important thing is to generate our own domestic resources so we can do our own work, make our own choices, and again, begin to reduce our dependency on foreigners and foreign aid. And this is why, again, we as Liberians, I keep saying we got to own this country. We got to own the problems, own the solution. We got to tell our own stories. We can't wait for anybody else to do it. We have to do it. And also, I keep saying is that we got to change this country. No, the country will not change because we talk it, we wish it, or because we let one person president. Everybody on this call got to play some part, some way in helping us to move this country forward. And again, that's how we reduce dependency on others. On how I gather information and facts, very good question, very interesting question. One is I believe in getting data and facts. I'm not the most emotive, not the most emotional person, if you will. Everybody has a emotional side, a rational side. Everybody heart and mind, right? Those two work in tandem. Some people are a bit more on the heart, the emotional. Some people more on the rational. I'm more on the rational side. And so for me, what drives my decision is to first get the right people with the right experience and expertise. It starts with the right team, the right people. I can't overemphasize that. If you are an insecure person, you do not make a good leader. You got to be comfortable with yourself. You got to know what you know. You got to know what you don't know. And you hire people to help you with areas that you don't know. And it's okay if they're smarter than you in that area. It's okay. And it's okay if they take credit. Because in the end, as a leader, nobody remember who the finance minister was, the minister of state was, the commerce, foreign minister. They remember you as president, good or bad. And if you want to be a good president, a consequential president, boy, you better get the right team of people. Get the right team of people, then you become data-driven. What are the facts? So I mentioned healthcare earlier and focusing on primary healthcare. The reason why we will focus on primary healthcare, because it's those 6 ailments that kill 80% of Liberian people. So that data, that fact, it will drive our policy. It will drive our strategy. And so information gathering is all about the fact, and then you got to go with some guts, some experience as well, by the way. But first you got to get the right people, the right team, get the right information, the right facts, and then some instinct, some experience got to come into play as well in terms of where you go, judgments you make, and the amount of people you're going to impact. All of those things are considerations, but it's a deliberate process, it's a thoughtful process. And the primary driver is about the facts and about the data. And the good news is in today's day and age, with technology, you can get a lot of data, you can get a lot of facts. You can track things. Monitoring performance, holding people accountable, learning from mistakes, right? And retooling. There's a saying in the military that, you make plans for war, and when you hit the battlefield, you have to adjust because the reality is different. And that's how you got to think about planning and fact gathering, decision making, and execution.
So folks, I just want to remind us about the rules, okay? If you're unmuted, generally, if you do anything, if there's any background noise, kindly, mute your phones or mute your laptops or whatever you're using. We're trying to keep it in a way where we go through a lot in such a short time. So please, if a question has been asked or a similar question, kindly make that decision and then let somebody else ask, or you ask a different question. Also, I wanted to observe something as we're going along and moderating. When things get said, we don't want to miss it. And so far tonight, I just got something that I guess all of us can take with us that Mr. Cummings said. He's very open to selecting a female VP, but he will leave the process open to an impartial selective process. And I think that's very, very important, right? When somebody is hosting a show and they make some news, we'll take it. He's not closing the door in today's inclusive politics. Alex Cummings has said that he's very, very open to considering a female VP for Liberia, but he can't guarantee it personally. Why? Because he believes in inclusivity and a broadened process. Honorable Cummings, did I read that correctly? And then secondly, we're not going to try 3 questions at a time because our host has proven to be very adept at, tabulating the questions and then answering them for the sake of time. Sorry, sir, go ahead.
I think you summarized it correctly, Lloyd. We will put a transparent process in place to select the best person. I hope and wish it's a woman, but as you said, I can't guarantee it. The process will deliver the outcome, and that person will be the best person to be the vice president of Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Lee is muted. Unmute. Lee?
Hello? From Philadelphia. First of all, good evening, Mr. Cummings.
Good evening, Lee. Lee, go ahead.
No. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up.
I also all like to appreciate you for all the tangible good work you are doing for Liberians. You are proven beyond all reasonable doubt that you are the kind of leader that Liberia deserves personally to move Liberia forward. My question to you is, when you elected as president come 2023, what going to be your first 90 days deliverable? And secondly, what is your stance? What going to be your stance on the establishment of war and economic crime courts? Because in my view, I think that without the establishment of
Lee, I have to interrupt you. We specifically asked for 1 question per person, Lee. So kindly adhere to that.
Okay, no problem. I want to ask the
next person.
Okay.
Yeah, hello. Okay, Mr. Cummings, good evening, sir. It's an honor to talk to you tonight. Actually, I don't have a question, but I just have some observation that I want to make. I've never been a politician. I've never taken part in politics, but my concern has to do with security as a man who have been trained, and then Liberian government, the entire Liberia have, put resources on to be trained. And we have so many people who have trained, who are career security in Liberia, but because of the political climate, since the post-war, it has caused damage to our security system in Liberia. So, sir, my question would be that if you become president of Liberia, what are your plans to restructure the security system in Liberia? We have open borders. All the borders are open. You talk about way of entrance. As a result, people are scared to go to Liberia to do business because, as the saying goes, that their first contact with people will be at, let's say, at the airport. If you have people who are assigned at the airport who are not trained as security, the reception that people receive from them, it creates fear as a result. That's a bad image, sir. So if you become president, I want you to kindly consider security to be your number one priority on your agenda, sir. And also, I want to advise you, sir, while you're doing your tour.
Thank you, sir. Your third person, thank you.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I'm in bed, so I don't want to come on camera. Good evening to the host and good evening, Mr. Cummings. I want to say thank you to Mr. Cummings for keeping up the tough skin. I know you have a lot of plans for Liberia. You have a lot of, like, a whole big platform. Especially I listened to you talking about healthcare and what your plans are for healthcare. But my question is, what is your plan for the Liberians themselves, the people that live in Liberia? What do you have in plan to work on their mind, to change their mind? Because you can go into Liberia with all of the good plan or whatever, but if you don't have program in place to work on the Liberian people to make sure they change their mind. And the reason why I actually want them to change their mind and change their way of thinking, for example, Liberia is very, very dirty. And then if they're not like trained, they don't have that mind, no matter which government is in place, people can leave the trash can right here and throw the trash on the ground. So if you planning on a good system for healthcare, what are some of the things you have to put in place for the nurses that won't be taking the medication out of the hospitals? That the doctor, like every doctor in Liberia have their own hospital. Every nurse in Liberia have their own drugstore. So what are some of the things you got to put in place to work on the mind to help Liberian people to change their mentality, their way of thinking, their way of doing things?
All right, thank you. So let me start with the first question from Lee. The first 90 days for 100 days plan. And I saw a comment that says I need to keep my answer short too. So we'll try to do that. But on the 100 day plan,
comments, please. The same people who say keep your answer short will complain that you didn't give enough details. So please be very comfortable in what you gave us.
Yeah, no, I plan to do that, Lloyd. So yeah. So on the 100-day plan, the first thing I said to Liberians that on inauguration day, the ceremony will be very simple, per whatever the Constitution prescribes. Nothing elaborate. And from that inauguration ceremony, we went straight to the office to go to work on the same day. So the swearing in takes place at 12 noon. I think it's the third Monday in January. Every 6 years, yeah. We start at 12, whatever the formal ceremony is, I know we're done by 3 o'clock, whatever it is, I'm going straight for the office. Because symbolically, we need to say to ourselves, to our people, we got to go to work. We got to take on this task with some urgency, right? Because we're so far behind. The world is in the 21st century, and Liberia is probably in the 19th, 20th century, right? We got a lot of catch up to do. So we'll go to work on day one, and we'll not be to the foreign ministry. That's symbolically, we just gotta, it can't be that. I don't know where it would be, but it will not be the foreign ministry. Then I also say that any inaugural ball celebration we have will have to be funded by private sources, supporters who want to celebrate, who want to have an inaugural ball. The Liberian government will not spend money on inauguration ball. Why? Because the citizens in Banga, in Ganta, in Zwedru, in Fishtown, in Brabasport are not going to benefit from government spending money on inaugural ball for a few hundred people to celebrate. So if there's an inaugural ball, private citizens want to fund it and have it, they invite me, I will attend. But the government will not spend money on inauguration ball. I think that's not practical. Again, we gotta send a message that every penny we spend gotta be spent wisely and into productive means to help uplift our people. And then the kinds of things we'll do in the first 100 days, we'll announce, and we'll start to execute, we'll announce a national use. Well, actually before that, also on day one, we'll issue an executive order or whatever the process is for asking for an audit of what we'll be inheriting. So I want to establish some kind of baseline. I want the General Accounting Office, the Liberian Anti-Corruption, all the appropriate institutions. We want to make sure they're resourced with the right people, and we ask them to audit the previous government. So, and this is not about a witch hunt. We're not going to say go audit any specific individuals. We will say go audit and let the facts, let the data lead where the data and the facts lead. But we want to establish a baseline. We want to know what we're inheriting. So we want to audit that. But then we'll announce and start to implement a national youth service program in the first 100 days. We will announce and start providing microcredit to market women, to Liberian businesses to help fuel economic growth. In the first 100 days, we'll present to the legislature a national development plan that we want them to debate, the country to debate, so we can adopt a 5, 10, 15-year development plan. I think we need to make it into legislation. We'll present legislation to the legislature that says a minimum 30% of the legislators should be women. So that's legislation we'll put together. But these will be some of the things we'll do in the first 100 days of our presidency, if God bless us, to give us the opportunity to serve our country. Security, from William, yes, important, it's critical. And we got to depoliticize the security sector. It's been particularly police today in Liberia can be completely politicized. And that we got to let the professionals who understand the sector, again, and get them the support, the resource, but let professionalize the security forces. And that means the immigration service, the customs people, the police people, the military people, the intelligence people. We need to have professionals running it, and we don't want to politicize it. And again, we want to get the resources and need to do the jobs to provide security and protection to us, our country. A bigger national security risk, though, is not our open borders or whatever. Is actually what's happening with the economy of our country and the hardship and the fact that there's so many young people unemployed. That's a risk. It could be explosive if we don't take care of that, if we don't fix the economy, provide jobs, training for this young youth bulge that we have going on. So we got to pay attention to that as well. And Orenia asked about something I have passion about hearts and minds. In the ANC platform, our vision, mission for Liberia, I think anybody else talks about this. We talked about engaging the hearts and minds of Liberians. Because she's right, you can fix everything. If you don't fix the hearts and minds and the attitudes and the standards, you can do a nice building. It will go back 5 years from now, it will be all run down, it will not be maintained, etc. And the way you address hearts and minds, by the way, we got to be deliberate and intentional, but it's through music, arts, culture, religion, sports. Those things can change behaviors. through music, art, theater, you help people think differently about themselves, right? I think we're too hard on ourselves as a people. You can teach good sportsmanship, you can teach integrity and that kind of stuff through all of these means. We need to engage religion, the church and the mosque, they're just as corrupt as anything else. We got to make sure we put pressure on them to clean it up because they can set the example for the rest of the country, the rest of the people, right? But it's through those things that people consider soft that we can engage ourselves differently. We can engage hearts and minds. And if we do those things, the attitudes will change, the behaviors will change. And then on the people selling drugs and stealing out, then we got to pay people a living wage. If you're a teacher and by the middle of the month, or you're a healthcare worker, by the middle of the month after you pay rent, buy your food, pay your tuition, you don't got no money, you will sell the drugs. I mean, human nature. The police will harass, right? The teacher will take money to change the grades. So we got to just make sure we pay people a living wage. And then when they do those things, we got to punish them. Punishment and consequences. Punishment and consequences. I will repeat it a third time. In Liberia today, you can do anything and get away with it. That cannot be. That will not be. And no matter who you are, no matter how supportive you were, in fact, I hope people close to me are the ones that try to see it, because we'll punish you to set the example, right? Consequences, punishment. But you got to pay people a living wage. You got to take away the excuses, and then we got to punish them. But hearts and minds is important already, so I'm glad you asked the question.
So again, as we go on every now and then, I will try to give the guests a break, to grab a drink, to get a breather, but also remark on some of the things he said so that we get it as we go along. So he said that on day one, he will request an audit for all of what he would be inheriting in the form of an executive order or the proper process. And I'm sure his lawyers will talk to him about that. And it's not a witch hunt, but he wants to be sure exactly what is being inherited to move the country forward. He will also announce a microcredit for marketeers within the first 90 days. He will also look to depoliticize the security sector. He will also look to pay people a living wage. And he said something, I think somebody just sent a message on the screen that talked about accountability is everything. It was an iPhone, the number was not clear. And then as the person was sending the message, honorable comments were saying punishment and consequences, especially people close to him, he wants to set an example. So we'll go into the era of accountability. Those are some of the themes that we're leaving with tonight for Liberians to take and mentally grapple with. Mr. Kishani can go ahead. I think you sent you a list of some other people. I just got a message. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. And then I think we're saying the one for Vera also. She's muted, so she will need to be unmuted if you do recognize her. Okay.
You hear me? Okay. Mr. Cummings, I haven't heard your views on the climate and climate change and the environmental challenges that Liberia faces. Could you please tell me some of your views and what you would do as President of the Republic? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Cummings, first of all, thank you for being on the line, and I've been one of those who have followed you since Nigeria. When I lived there, I was introduced to you by Mrs. Comfort Minor and Chief Mrs. Ovra Benson. But my concern have been the messaging from the ANC during this whole issue that we're going through. Sometimes it seems that the messaging was either belligerent, and at that point in time, it seemed to be considered reconciliatory. So I'm wondering what message were we actually trying to put out there, and how do we work towards our messaging? again, the time the Secretary General spoke, I strongly believe that the message was what he put across, put the ANC in a bad light. And then you came on Sunday and had a very wonderful press conference. And I strongly believe the strong word that we should have taken from that message was, I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity, even for the presidency of Liberia. But then by Monday, the Secretary General on Spoon Talk with his different set of messaging, directed totally different from that message you had on the day before. So how do we channel our message out? I think that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, we said 3. Let's take one more. Then we'll address.
Yeah, can you hear me? Thanks for having me, and thanks, Mr. Cummings, for being here. So my question to you, Mr. Cummings, is that as president, what specific step will you take to better secure government information and to show the Liberian people that your government is capable of safeguarding sensitive government information? Because the reason why I bring this question to you is, if you look at the current government, the current administration, like information leak out every day, then certain information that should be kept, that could cause some grave, national security problems in our country are always leaked out. So what will your government do in safeguarding sensitive information? Thank you.
Thank you. So on climate change, Deconte's question. So the first thing I would say is that climate change is real. It's a problem for the world. That Liberia, specifically Africa in general, we are not the major contributors to the climate change crisis. Is actually the industrialized is the West, the United States, Europe, China, India, Russia. Those countries are the primary contributors to the crisis historically and today. It's important to get that out. That's just a fact, right? Having said that, though, we contribute in our own small way, and we got to be a part of the solution. All right. So yes, we're not a major contributor. Quote unquote, it's not our fault, but we're living some of the consequences of that, and therefore we have to contribute to it. But it's important that we get the facts right. That those countries where most of you live today are the primary contributor to greenhouse gases and the fossil fuels and that kind of stuff. And in some ways, there's some people that argue that, you all develop your country using fossil fuel, it was fine for you. Now, when it's our time to do it, you're saying we shouldn't. That's a point of view. I'm not sure I share that, because we all live the consequence of climate change, and we would disproportionately be affected because of climate change, so we got to contribute. But again, it's important to get facts out about this climate change issue. But what are we going to do? We as we think about how we develop the electricity sector, because that's one of the primary issues, we got to think in terms of how we do it in a way that is responsible from a global warming, from a climate change perspective. Whenever we design roads, because again, we almost started from scratch in Liberia, almost everything in a way, right? And so we have the opportunity as we design, as we construct, to keep the climate in mind, to do it in a climate responsible way. In some ways, it's more difficult for the developed countries to redo what they do. It's easier when you're kind of starting with a blank sheet, so you can design things, processes, infrastructure, everything we can design with the climate in mind. So we have an opportunity to do that. We got this massive forest. We got among the biggest forests in the world still, contiguous forests. We get paid today for not aggressively, cutting down those trees. I don't know. I have a question whether we get paid enough, because I believe we are a net contributor to the reduction in fossil fuels because of the massive forests we have. And I would want to make sure that if we're not cutting it, to help the world and to help us, of course, that we're getting enough compensation, particularly for the people, because you visit the areas around the Sapo forest and all our forest areas, and our people are living in abject poverty. And they're staring at all of this forest contributing to all of our well-being. And I would want to make sure that we're getting fully compensated for that. And if we do decide to cut those trees down, we'll do it in a responsible way. Some of those trees are being cut down today. I'm not sure how responsible we are in the replanting, in the process of doing that. So, but the good news is, it's an issue for the world. It's definitely an issue for Liberia. And everything we do, we will have it with a climate focus in mind as we redesign and rebuild our country. We make sure we do it in a responsible, eco-friendly way. On ANC messaging, so Emmanuel, you're correct. It has been confused. And we got to fix that. We need message discipline in the party, particularly from the leadership of the party. You cannot control, as you know, all the partisans, and we shouldn't try to. But for the leadership of the party, we need consistent messaging. And it hasn't been that way. I will fully admit, and ultimately the buck stops with me. But I assure you going forward, we've recently had this discussion literally 2 days ago, that we will enforce message discipline. And for leaders of the party that break the discipline, we will publicly rebuke them because we need consistent messaging. Our role is to positively advocate for what we believe. We should call out in a constructive, respectful way the untruths and the lies that come the other way, the contradictions. Yes, we shouldn't just accept it. We should call it out, but you can do it in a responsible way, in a respectful way. It can be strongly worded as well, but the personal attacks, the cussing, all that sort of stuff should not come from the leadership of the ANC. And again, we're going to start to enforce message discipline from the leadership of the party. And it sort of ties to, in a way, how you secure information and what's happening with the CDC now. The first way you secure information, by the way, is to have the right people around you, the right caliber of people, qualified, competent, confident people. In government, in big businesses, you do these things where you got to compartmentalize information on a need-to-know basis. Not everybody needs to know everything. And it's not of offense to anybody. It's just a fact. Everybody doesn't need to know everything. And sometimes you actually protect people from themselves by not sharing some information with them, right? So on a need-to-know basis, we'll compartmentalize. I think perhaps more than is being done now as a means of doing that. But the other part is we will run the government in a transparent way so that almost everything we do, it will be the kind of stuff that Liberian people know it should be okay for them to know, because we're not doing anything untoward. We're not going to be trying to scheme to steal from Liberian people or, any minister who trying to do stuff on their own. We got to go after them. We got to get rid of them. Because I said, anybody who comes to support me because they want to come play big shot or they want to change the kind of chop, I am not your guy. It's not about chopping. It's not about coming playing big shot. Do you know who I am? It's about coming to do the work. You will get paid. You will get paid every month. But you got to come to do the work, make a sacrifice so we can change the country. If that's not your interest, you can go support Joe, or whoever. But the caliber of people will help us. We'll compartmentalize information, right? And in certain meetings, certain conversations, it happens even in the US government. Nobody would take their cell phone into certain meetings. They have safe rooms where you go in, any electronic device, personal ones, the official people who will take meetings, notes, or record it, they do it, right? But nobody will carry their phone in there to be recording people and all that kind of stuff. So again, we'll compartmentalize certain meetings. Will not allow certain people, or they will not allow people to bring their technology in there to control leaks. But we'll run the government in a transparent way so that most things we will not care if people know, right? Of course, there's some things, national security things that you shouldn't disclose, and those things will manage in the right way. All right.
Okay, I think can you guys hear me? Okay. Good evening. My name is Vera Addy. I'm the Vice President for Liberian Women Advocacy Network International. And my question to Mr. Cummings this evening is sexual gender-based violence is prevalent in Liberia. How will the Cummings administration tackle the problem in terms of arrest, punishment, and care for survivors and victims? And also, will Cummings administration consider abolishing gender ministry and placing them back on the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare? Thank you.
So let's move on, and then when Fred unmutes, we can bring him on.
Yes, so can you hear me? It's being with you, Honorable Cummings. This is Pastor J. B. Wallow, former candidate on the ANC ticket in district number 30, Maserado candidate before the ANC pulled out of the election. I'm very proud of you. So proud to call you my political leader. Thank you for standing up to whatever that has been happening recently in the CPP. I think there is one indication we can learn from that incident, and that is there are a lot of people in the constituent political party that don't want you and the ANC to be part of the CPP. But I think you have addressed that very well. You stood your ground, and I am very proud of you for doing that. Since I have to ask a question, this is my question. You have talked a lot about physical health, but one thing I have not heard so far is the mental health issues we are having in our country. Liberia is a post-war country, and right now we are having this increase in the drugs and alcohol use in most of the communities in Liberia. What will be your platform on these issues? I think it put a serious security threat to our country. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Monier. So Vera's question was on sexual gender-based violence. And the first thing I always say answering that question, Vera, is that, you know, as Liberian men, and all the men on this call, listen to my voice tonight and beyond, we should be embarrassed. We should be ashamed at the statistics around sexual gender-based violence in our country. We should be completely ashamed. We should be embarrassed. And let me just declare that. And as president, we will talk about it in those terms, because we got to face the fact that we are the perpetrators of that. And as men of this country, we should be ashamed at the statistics around sexual gender-based violence. My first statement. Second thing is, though, there needs to be punishment and consequences for people who commit those acts. And Liberians got to be a part of that. Families got to be a part of that. We got to have these discussions in the public. Families will say, oh, don't bring shame to the family, let it go. You bring shame to the uncle, to the brother, to the father, you know, to the cousin. No. Those people need to be reported. They need to be punished appropriately for the violence against women. Women are not our property. We don't own them, and they have a right to control their bodies, who touch them, all of those things. So we got to make sure Liberian families will understand that. And then the justice system got to be organized and designed so that we don't re-victimize victims of sexual and gender-based violence. We got to make sure that we provide the support, the equipment, the forensics, you know, to do the investigations and all that sort of stuff. That all got to be part of the process in terms of how we address this. In some ways, we make excuses kind of for like everything in our country, and people do things with impunity today. Almost everything. And it's like, no, it's wrong. And so there's a moral part to this. This is where, again, we talked about hearts and minds earlier, where religion can play a part, and how we think about this is the arts and culture and theater and dramatization to help people think differently about all these things. But again, it's something we have passion for. My wife has passion for this area. The Cummings Foundation that she runs did a workshop, a seminar. Dr. Francine Richardson went to Liberia to help facilitate that. So even on a personal level, this is something we are focused on. But as a government, this is something we'll make sure we put the resources towards. But we gotta have the conversations within our society, in our communities, and we gotta shame the people that do these things, and we gotta encourage people to come forward, and then we gotta punish the perpetrators as sort of disincentive for those kinds of behaviors. On abolishing the gender ministry, no, I have not thought about it. My initial answer is no, I don't think we'll abolish it and put it back on the health and welfare. I think gender is too important to actually do that. We'll make sure they're focused, advocating appropriately on behalf of women. And so, look, I think there's some ministries we need to rethink, but gender for me is not one of those. I think it needs to stand alone, adequately supported, adequately led, to focus on gender issues, including, issues around SGBV. Pastor Wallo, good to hear your voice again. Thanks for your comments. Pastor Wallo mentioned he was an aspiring District 13. And this is where I remind people that we made a lot of sacrifices on behalf of the CPP because we believe in it to make it work. And Pastor Wallo was one of the casualties. And I will say this publicly. I want to acknowledge him. We apologize to him and we're happy to him, his candidacy in that district. So Pastor Wallo, thank you again for that. We believe that you got to make trade-offs in life. You got to make choices. You got to make sacrifices in the interest of the greater good. And that was one example where we did that. We did that in Cape Mount, other places to try to keep this thing together. And our pay was to get stabbed in the back, but that's okay. That's life. That happens, right? On mental health, it's a very important issue. And it's probably the silent killer, because it's hard. I mentioned the 16 that kill most Liberians, and mental health, I'm sure, will be, but it's hard to measure, right? If you know what I mean. But we know it's a problem, it's a challenge, and therefore we need to make sure that as we think about healthcare facilities, we need to think about mental health as well. Investing in getting psychologists, psychiatrists, helping our young people find opportunities, jobs and training. Make sure we're interdicting the drugs coming in. Those people who are benefiting from sale of drugs and alcohol, particularly illegally. We need to make sure there are consequences for those people as well, so we can stop the flow, we can stop the usage. Where it makes sense. In the United States, for example, many alcohol products are taxed very high to try to reduce the usage. So we've got to think about some of those things, right? As vehicles to protect our people, almost protect them from themselves, if you will. But we got to invest in mental health as well, because it's a big problem for our country, for our people.
Yeah, we got hands up, Monet.
1 second. Besides that, I also see Monet. Some hands have come up now. We got Fuller Williams, we got Prince, we got Victor, Ukatu, we got Meda Heron, we got Wema Gila. So I'll let you decide. But hands have come up since you and I last communicated. So you can still read the question. I will be the first one, and you recognize two more. He answered them for the next three.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is because it will depend on where it is in 2024. It might be finished by then, because I see people that are working every day. And so if it's finished by then, we'll move in right on day one. If it's not finished, it depends on how much more work they have to do to finish it. So I can't give a definitive answer, but I do believe that the affairs of the presidency should be run out of the executive mansion. And I know there's a lot of people concerned about, the place is, I don't know, being wasted. And so we will make sure we take imams, we take pastors, we'll go and pray the evil out of the mansion. We will. I see Fred laughing there. We will make sure all the evil spirits leave the executive mansion. But I think the affairs of state should take place in that facility. And symbolically, I don't think sitting in the foreign ministry is the right thing to do. Leadership is about symbolism. That's why you have your Capitol building, the legislature. For the legislature, you have the Temple of Justice. I mean, that's our Capitol Hill. And I think the presidency should be in the executive mansion. And we'll pray all the spirits, the bad, ill spirits out of there, and we'll occupy and run the presidency from there. Because I think it's symbolically it's the right thing to do. And it will be the beginning of a new chapter in terms of the country moving forward. But President, we are moving before 2024. So I don't know if that will happen or not.
Actually, money, 1 second, Mr. Kishan. We ending at 11, so by 10:55 we'll wrap up. Give the guest an opportunity to say his final goodbye, and then we'll wrap it up. So we literally got about 9 minutes. We'll stretch it to 10 minutes at most.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Cummings. Good evening and good to see you. Typically, when a candidate comes to an audience, he's after making his speech, is asking for the votes. In this case, many of your supporters here in the diaspora have not been able to go home to vote. And so the question is, like I said, the harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. I remember in 2017, over 30 of us went to Liberia and we campaigned. I campaigned in District 3 and Bongmans. But the question is, what do you ask or expect of your supporters here in the diaspora, other than those who are town criers like the Ascendi, the Duke, and and there's so many out there who are doing podcasts, Monet Kishen, they're doing great work. What do you expect of your supporters in the diaspora to do in order to make you successful in this election season?
Right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's do all five.
All right, thank you very much. My question is, and this is an issue that really been bothering me. When it comes to businesses, that most of our major businesses in Liberia owned by Lebanese. People will argue, say they are Liberians and one or two. But the thing is, I want to see how best, and I don't want us to do it like how they call him, Raul Mugabe from Zimbabwe, how he just took the farm from the white farmers and there was chaos. But I want to see how best we can leverage the few that Liberians will have seti bread. It only shouldn't be for Lebanese, but how Liberians can also have businesses that will look like seti bread. Because these guys control our economy. It's not fair for us. They control the economy. Major things in Liberia is done by foreigners. So is there any way where, Mr. Cummings, you can leverage a fee and have Liberian involved? I think that would be good. Thank you.
Honorable Cummings, good evening, good afternoon. I got a question about establishing a national gold reserve, reconciliation, and the transition process. I want to tell you that in 2024, when you should have to begin to take office, the transitional process will be very chaotic. The current government would not follow the rules. It will be very chaotic. Do the CPP have any contingency in place that will help to give you a smooth transition into the presidency? And you seem to be talking as if to say you're speaking for your own party perspective, but we have the CPP, and we learned that the government will be proportional between the CPP, the different political parties.
Prince, we said one question per person, so
thank you.
Indulge us, we have to stick to that.
Thank you.
Please. Thank you, Prince.
Thank you so much. Hey, Mr. Cummings, I actually just finished typing my question in the chat, but I'll just read it out. What are your views regarding decentralization and possibly equipping local and county governments with the ability to collect taxes so that they can undertake their own development need and lessen that burden that the national government has to cover the whole country? And then just in general of like holding local and county elections as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Cummings, how are you? The young man before me just took one of mine that was about decentralization, but I say that, I always say Liberia's problem issues is not politics, it's illiteracy. Could you speak to us about your plan for education? Because we need to fast forward our system and get our young folk and even ourselves to a place where at least the nation can be on a high school level. So what would you say, or what are your plans towards education?
Hi, Mr. Cummings. Yeah, I'm here. Basically, I have one question and a recommendation. So, firstly, is just a buttress to the question Lamont asked. I want to know, how do we intend to mobilize local resources while we look out there to bring in investors and international partners? And then the second question is about, you said that
Chief, I have to stop you.
Though it's a recommendation, it's not a question, it's a recommendation.
Yeah, then make it.
Let me just run it quick. It's a recommendation.
I know, he said recommendation. I just want to remind you to make a recommendation because when you ask a question.
No, it's a recommendation. So
yes, sir.
The recommendation is, you talk about
you got one over because you the last.
All right, yeah. you talk about raising the budget to $2 billion, and I mean, right now we see to $1 billion, and right now we see the government talking about raising the budget to $700 billion. So what I want to say is that your proposal is very good, it's profound, it's very ambitious, is very ambitious. What you need to do is to back those proposals by data, and because data is very theory and it's visual, so people will be able to see that what you are talking is very doable. That's all. That's all.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you. Actually, there's 6 of them, but all good. So Fred had a question about expectations from the diaspora. And I would say diaspora can help as follows, and this is in no particular order. But one is you can help with the recruiting process in Liberia. Diasporans got family, friends, relationships that they can call and ask to support us. To join, either they can join the party or not, up to them. We like them to, but they don't have to. They can come to our events, to our rallies, but diaspora can engage their fellow Liberians at home too. So that's an important part. They can mobilize, if you will. Diasporans can help with solutions, with ideas, with suggestions. I keep saying is we, both in Liberia and in the diaspora, we collectively got to come up with solutions to fix our country's problems. And many diasporans have the expertise, they have the experience, they've worked in the developed world. They can come up with some solutions and ideas and suggestions. So that can be a major area. We're trying to develop sector experts, think tanks for the different sectors. So we're trying to now identify a few people who can look at the healthcare sector and recommend what do we do in primary healthcare? What do we actually do? What's the data that supports what you do first, second, third? Education, agriculture, infrastructure, technology. So diaspora can play a major part in that, together with Liberians on the ground as well. So funding, giving us some solutions, suggestions, and mobilization, recruiting folks on the ground to support us are the three things that the diaspora can help us with. Fuller had a question about Liberianization, kind of my words, how do we get Liberians to own the private sector? So first of all, I'll say to you, Fuller, is that private sector growth, and growing the economy, as we say in Liberia, that's my area. That's the area I know well. An area I grew up in the private sector, and understand how business people think, what drives them to invest, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to grow the economy. And Liberians, we got to be unapologetic. Liberians got to disproportionately benefit from the growth in our economy. No apologies. And the responsible foreign businesses will want that as well, because they will know it's not sustainable to have Liberians disenfranchised from their own country, their own economy. So we got to grow that. And by the way, if we're growing this pie, if we're growing the economy, it is not a zero-sum game. Everybody can win. There will be a role for the Lebanese, for the Indians, for the Americans, the Japanese, the Chinese. But Liberians got to, just 80% of the growth or more got to be for Liberians, right? And what do we need to do? We need to make sure that the government starts to procure from Liberians. Look, we import everything we consume into our country. It shouldn't be that way, and it will take years to change that dynamic. But Liberians can be the importers. Importation is basic arithmetic. It's not even algebra. I ain't even talking about calculus. You import something for $5, you sell for $6 or $5.50 or $7, whatever. You import for $10, you sell for $15, $14, $12, whatever. Liberians can do that. The government should be, and the government is the biggest procurer. Again, it shouldn't be that way. The private sector should be the biggest procurer of resources. The government is today in our country. That we got to change over time as well. So let the government procure for Liberians. That's how you create the Liberian city. To do that, though, the government got to facilitate, because Liberians don't have the capital. They don't have the money. We got to facilitate the funding, the capital. We got to connect them to the supplier overseas, get rid of the middle person, and then let it. But then when we do that, though, the Liberian people got to deliver the goods. Just like if we do it with the Lebanese or the Indians, they got to do it. The Liberian person, if you order 9 cars for us, first of all, it's got to be at a fair price. You got to make a profit, but you can't extort the government. And you got to deliver. If we say we want 10 cars, you got to give us 10 cars of particular spec. You can't give us 9 in a lower spec, because we'll punish you. We'll not accept that. But it doesn't mean if one person do it, if Fuller, you're a bad person, it doesn't mean another Liberian will not give it to. So it's all Fuller was bad, now we're going back to Lebanon. No, we're not going to do that. Then we'll find somebody else, another Liberians. But the primary way we do it initially to have impact is the government needs to procure from Liberians, because the government is the biggest purchaser of almost everything in our country. Again, it's the wrong way. It shouldn't be that way, but it is what it is. And we got to, again, provide credit, financing, make the connections, and then we got to hold them responsible. And that's the fastest way to start to Liberianize the economy. But then we need to grow the economy, invest in agriculture, invest in new sectors. I keep talking about ecotourism, and the word eco is important because we don't have the faster infrastructure. But people will know, they will rough it out, they will know they will be in the canoes, in the Palawa huts, in the huts, and all that kind of stuff. A different source of income for the country, a job creator for our people. And so we grow the economy, Liberians got disproportionate benefit. But the Lebanese are already there. The Indians are already there. As you said earlier, we don't want to go the Robert Mugabe route, right? Or the Idi Amin route, right? We got to encourage them to invest into manufacturing because they got the capital today, right? So let's leverage it. Let's work with them, leverage it. And at the same time, we can grow Liberian businesses. We can have big Liberian businesses. We got to let the private sector be the driver of growth in our country. We in government cannot be threatened by the private sector. And successive governments have been afraid of another power center. No. It will take pressure off the government. It's government job. Let the private sector create jobs. And they will pay taxes, right? The employees will pay taxes to the government. That's how we drive the revenue too, to get to this billion, right? By creating jobs. So that's what we need to do. First question on the National Gold Reserve. Look, we got to look at the economics of it. Most currencies today in the world it used to be backed by gold. That's not the case anymore. I mean, the euro, the UK pound, the Americans still have Fort Knox, but the amount of US dollars that flows in the US and in the world, there's not enough gold to back it. So the gold standard has effectively gone away. So maybe we need a reserve. I don't know the answer to the question. I just know you don't need that to support your. What we need to do, though, we need to get value for the gold that leaves the country. And I'm not sure we do. Whether we're getting full value for our gold and diamond that leaves Liberia. And that is the first step to make sure that what is leaving our country, we're getting a fair share as Liberians, and then we're deploying it to develop the country. On the transition process, yes, it will be chaotic, as you suggest. There will be nothing there. I'm sure they will just leave, right? But we know that, so we're going to prepare for that, right? 2022 for me is a year of policy work. This is why we want to develop these think tanks, right? And we will know, we'll project, we'll have a sense for what will be there, what we inherit, and we'll be prepared for the chaos. And we know we'll be starting from scratch in many areas, in many ministries, right? So psychologically, we'll be prepared to do the work, we'll do the planning ahead of time, so that, on day one, we can hit the ground. We'll have no illusions, no delusions about the state of the country that we'll be inheriting come 2024. Decentralization, yes, I believe in decentralization, but I think it needs to be planned. It needs to be deliberate. I don't think you flip a switch from one to the other and say decentralized. We should have we should say, I'm making it the time frame up. I'm not saying it exactly, but we might want to say, look, 5 years from now, we want to start electing superintendents and mayors, for example, and we want them to start collecting some local taxes to fund themselves. Then we work towards what do we need to put in place to make that happen so that it works well. So, for example, the current voting system, we know it doesn't work today. There's all this voter registration, we complain about it. So if you don't fix that, and then you add it on to the more voting for mayors and stuff, that's definition of insanity. That's doing the same thing, expect different results. So we should set a goal or destination about decentralization and what that means, what we want to happen when we get there. And then we'll take the time, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 6, I don't know the time. Then we'll work to put the mechanism in place so that when we pull the trigger, we decentralize, it will work. And it will be better than what we have today. So I believe in that concept. I believe we should work towards it. But I also believe we should do it smartly. We should do it deliberately. Otherwise, it will be even more chaotic. I promise you. The country will be even more divisive. It will be even more corrupt if we don't do it the right way and make sure we got the right processes and technology in place to decentralize our country. But that should be a destination. That should be a goal. And we should put a stake in the ground and say, by this time, we will do it. And let's put the process in place to get it done. On education, illiteracy, it is a priority. I mentioned teacher education is a major priority. But then we also got to think about adult education, right? That's got to be part of what we do. And we got to use technology to help with the educational system and process. So the few good teachers we have, like we're talking on Zoom today, 2 days ago and tomorrow morning, 2 days ago, I was on a Zoom call with young people in Guanjama from the United States, right? Tomorrow, I'm on a Zoom call, I think with some students from Margibi, I think, from Kakata or Habel or somewhere. My point is, we can use technology. You have a good teacher who can be wherever. They can be in Hapo, they can be in Zwedru, and they can be teaching somebody in Sanakwe, right? So this is where internet connectivity becomes important. We can use technology to accelerate the improvement in our educational processes, and we got to leverage technology. And then, boy, my question about getting to $1 billion. Look, we've done some work, and we're doing even more detailed work because I do believe in data and facts. But let me give you some quick data and facts, even though we've run past 11 o'clock. So the way I like to help people understand this thing, Ghana, right, is about 25 million people. So it's about 5 times our population, roughly. The Ghanaian national budget, I believe, is somewhere between 8 and 10 billion annually. So if we are 20% of, the population, and this is simplistic, this is just meant to be illustrative, right? So then our budget today should be roughly 20% of 10 billion, right? Which is about, you argue it could be about $2 billion or $1.5 billion. But again, that's just to say, to dimensionalize that this is not an impossible number to get to. And if this government can get to 700 million, that would be good too, by the way. I don't believe they will, but that would not be a bad thing. And particularly if they spend it wisely, right? That would be a good thing for the country if they spend it wisely to help the country move forward. But the areas, look, I don't believe we get enough today from our natural resources. Today, the primary source of revenue from our country is from our minerals, iron ore, from rubber, from forestry, from maritime, from custom and excise duties. Are we getting full value of those resources? Big question in my mind. I think we can maximize and get more value for that. The second thing we got to look at is look at new sources of revenue of our country. And we have some ideas on how we can identify those new sources of revenue to drive revenue growth. Then we got to stop this thing called corruption, this thing called stealing, right? And redeploy those into more productive uses. And that, by definition, will drive more revenue. So, but there's a team of young Liberians who are getting to the nitty-gritty of what that means. But it is eminently doable. And our aspiration now, the more I work on it, the more I think about it, our aspiration will be even higher for that number as we grow the private sector. So, do you, Lloyd, Money, you want me to conclude now, or you want to some final word?
Thank you, Mr. Kishan. In fact, let me be perfunctory. Thank you, General. We appreciate your time, your detailed, your methodical approach. Honorable Cummings, thank you for joining us. Again, this was not a Cummings function. We had to reach out to you. You were able to juggle your schedule and accommodate us. Hopefully, Liberians will feel better tomorrow morning when they wake up because of what they've heard from you. And as we go forward, ladies and gentlemen, this will be something that we'll do regularly. And as we work on their massage and make it better, we'll begin asking you. You can send in your questions in advance. It's better for the host. It's easier for the moderators. It's also better for the questioners. Mr. Cummings, we've learned a lot. Those of us who had not followed you before, we learned a lot from you tonight about your campaign, about your vision for the country. And so all we want to ask you to do right now is to, give us your parting words, not just for tonight, but for the week and the weeks ahead as we go forward. And then one thing somebody just texted me and said, Mr. Cummings is great. I was not supporting him. I like his answers. I'm not on his team. I'm reading it. But please, let him simplify his answers for the Liberian audience. What that means, Mr. Cummings, you're much more, involved in the process than we are. So I just let you take that and run with it. Again, it's been an honor. We appreciate you and your time. And thank you very much. When you're done, I will then present it to our host. Thank you.
Okay. So let me thank everyone who was on this call. All the questions were actually excellent questions. Munir, thank you for facilitating. Lloyd, thank you as well. I enjoyed the conversation. And as you suggest, Lloyd, this will not be the last time we do this. As often as we can schedule it, we should do this and answer the questions of our fellow Liberians. So thank you for that. The question that Munir asks is, sort of wide now. First of all, I would say I've been involved with Liberia my whole life. Because it wasn't visible, because I wasn't in politics, doesn't mean I wasn't involved. And I mean, that's important for everybody to understand, that this is not sort of Johnny come lately, if you will. Is it Johnny come lately to politics? Yes, I am new to politics. Check, fact. Am I new to our country, to helping our people? The answer is no. Was it visible? The answer is no, it wasn't, but that's because I wasn't interested in politics. And even today, I feel it inappropriate that you make public what you do for people. I think that's in poor taste. And I know people in politics tell me, oh, you're in politics. People keep asking the question. And we cataloging some of the things the foundation have done and that stuff, but I have been in politics. And the other thing I would say to people who ask that question, though, is I'm not perfect, by the way. You're going to be choosing from imperfect choices. I don't check all the boxes, but nobody you choose around will check all the boxes. The choices today, and there may be more choices by 2023, but the primary choices the Liberians have are President Weah, former Vice President Joseph Boakai, and Alexander Cummings. No disrespect to others, right? And more may come and more may emerge, and some existing ones today now on the radar may come up. But those are the choices. And I keep reminding Liberians, the choice is not between Jesus Christ and Muhammad. You're choosing between flawed men. No women have emerged yet. That may be the case. Let's hope so too. And so Alex Cummings is not perfect. And you got to make a relative decision. It's a relative choice. And I also say, for me, this is not personal. If people believe George Weah has done a good job and they want to re-elect him, it's okay. That's their choice. If people think former Vice President Joe Boakai will make a good president, if they want to, the choices are kind of three choices for me. Is you kind of elect the president and you keep going, or you go back to the past, if you will, or you choose a different future. But it's up to Liberians to make that choice. We can only make our case, judge all of us, and then you decide who best to support. And yes, Lloyd, I need help simplifying my answers. I fully admit it's a challenge. You got to be real, right? And so I welcome any thoughts, suggestions, or help with that. So as anybody on this call listen to some of the answers, if you have ideas of how I could tell a story to make the answer real or use a local analogy, I'm open to that. I welcome that because I know that that's an opportunity. But finally, again, let me just say to everyone here, I believe in us. I believe in our country. I believe in our people. I believe we can change this country. But I also say we got to do the work. We're not changing because I say so, you say so. You ask brilliant questions. You make brilliant suggestions. That will not change Liberia. Liberia will change. We do the work. We make the sacrifices. This country will change. If we just think we're talking, we should make suggestions, forget it. It will not happen. If you just think you let Alexander come in and your problems are solved, forget it. Everybody, in our own way, have to contribute in some way to change this thing called Liberia. It will not happen. They say, God help those who help themselves. We got to help ourselves as a people if we want this country to change. But I'm determined to do my part, to offer myself to our country, to our people, so we can come and work together to change Liberia, because I believe we deserve a better Liberia. Thank you all very much. Emmanuel, back to you for final words. I got to prepare for a 7 o'clock call tomorrow with those students from, I think Habel or Kakata tomorrow I'm talking to.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cummings, for being here for the last 2 hours. We are very happy to host you. This is non-partisan forum. Our suggestion to Mr. Cummings is at least to do this once a month. I think as people get to know you better, they will see how your vision for Liberia is perhaps the best vision for Liberia. We had 1 or 2 technology glitch. I think we're going to try to get rid of next time. We thought we were preparing for 250 people, but unfortunately, after 100, the rest was locked out. So I think, as you can see, it was well attended. We are going to work towards making sure that we have the maximum participation in our next zone. I want to say thank you to the group. I will turn it over to Abraham Walker to close, and then we will be retiring for the night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm reminded by the quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And our guest of honor today is trying to answer that question as to what he can do for Liberia. So we want to thank you for your time. The overloaded schedule is sometimes having the toll, but thank you for hanging in there with us and giving us your perspective on things. I also want to thank, on behalf of the organizing committee, we want to thank your team, your ABC 2023 team, your communication team. We work with them in the back end and to make this program a success today. So we just want to extend our thanks to the ABC 2023 team, including the chief of staff and the chair on communications and all of the folks that accommodated us. And we want to say thank you to Gilman, who helped in the operating end, in muting, unmuting, and trying to get people to be able to process that thought. So Gilman, we want to thank you. And again, I'd like to, if all of us can unmute and give our guests and our moderator
So let me apologize for the host. He was testing our attention span just now when he muted everybody. So I apologize. But,
so let's
AB, right before you finish. AB. Right before Ms. Wright, can you mute your background, please? Right before you finish, AB, you were congratulating the back end of the ABC and the ANC Global team for working with you all to organize it. I believe we can give 30 seconds if you will kindly indulge me. If I cross my bounds, I submit. But we can give 30 seconds to Yassini for the communications team, just to address the group, and then you can conclude that we can give Mr. Cummings the applause. Or the applause.
I will oblige to that.
Yassini?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Cummings, for being here, Emmanuel, to Lois, Abraham, and all of you, Manekisha. Thank you so much. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the rest of the world to get to see Mr. Cummings and see what we're seeing, why we support him, to ask all the questions that they need to ask, because the future of Liberia depends on what we do today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On that note, can we give our guests a round of applause?
Yes, please.
We want to say good night, everybody. We look forward to our next invitation.
Good night, good night, good night.
Oh, AB, give me a call.
Hi, Yama.
AB, man, give me a call.
Hi. Hi, Yama.
Thank you,
Hi,
everybody.
Yama.
Listen,
Thank
hi,
you.
Sis Myrtle.
One great,
Hey,
great
how you doing?
Lord, where you been hiding?
I'm here.
Yeah, good night, yeah. Good night.
Yeah, good night. See you all.
Myrtle.
Oi.
This Lord, Gwen invited. Gwen invited.
Who's asking me now?
Yes,
Yes,
wonderful.
Lord, it's Emery.
Who?
Emery.
Emery. Y'all, pick up.
How are you, man?
Come again,
Good, man. You mean you left? Nothing much.
I'm still in Maryland.
Yama, I'm calling you in a few. Look how you looking at your mom.
I know. I just washed my hair.
Everywhere you been hiding, I'm still in Maryland.
I have no intention.
I send you my number. Check your direct message. I'll send you my number.
I will check it. I will check it.
I have no voice. No voice at all.
Oh, no.
We have enough.
Kelly, I didn't even want to talk, so no problem.
Oh no!
Emmanuel,
I think the audience was awesome.
Emmanuel.
Voice?
Emmanuel.
I hope the host plan more forum like this, because some of us that are non-political have tons of questions. I was just telling Yassine that we have a lot of questions for the ANC platform that will be beneficial, or at least pull some of us to be more active and more present in the decision making going forward.
We'll talk with you, Miss Yarma.
Thank
By the
you.
way, have our sympathy for
I'm
your
loving
brother's
the
passing.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I look forward to more interactions.
Okay.
Hi, Cindy.
Yeah, I will back you up. I will back you up tonight.
I see you.
Yeah, I will
Pat
back you
Mandela.
up tonight.
There's a little thing tonight, man. Come on.
Where you at? I can't see you. I am so blind.
I'm here in my little corner.
Why are you hiding? Oh, now I see you.
Mandela, you cause any trouble. Hey, Pat.
Hey.
You need to go and do your eye test. Yeah.
I got my glasses on. that just old age. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Like Friday in the increase they had it called a.
It's okay. I'm blind. I'm still pretty, so that's good.
Oh, that's 100%.
Oh Lord!
Don't let her cross that line.
Emmerich.
Yeah, Lord.
I didn't see. I think you please give me the number now. I didn't see it. So what's the number?
I need to catch up with you this weekend. Yeah.
That crown and that crew.
I've been back for the last 2 years. And when I wanted to go, if you walk out to me, if I leave.
Yeah. I didn't sign your leave. Your leave.
We'll catch up this weekend.
Next time, put it in early.
But yeah, you stay in Maryland?
I'm in Maryland. Yeah, I'm in Maryland.
But Emmerich, I supposed to have a number. But money boy.
I'm here.
I mean, sorry, General, not money boy, but General, sorry.
I am. And you can see Pat Mandela.
Hey, what's up?
Guy.
Yes.
General, it wasn't fair for you to mute here.
Somebody said Lord Scott just now.
It wasn't fair, General.
That was Vita Wright, Lord Scott.
How are you, Mama? How you doing?
Well, are you back in the country?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, please make contact.
I texted you on it, and when you send a message, I texted you back.
I didn't get no text from you, Lord.
Make contact, Lord.
Make contact, Lord.
Lord Scott, make contact. Thank you.
Yeah, I sent my number on the thing for you to call.
I see no number here, Lord Scott. And I talk family talk on this live.
Check this. Check this side. Where is Yassine? Yassine?
It's not bad. That's his way of restraining himself.
Yassine.
Yes.
Thank you, Mama.
No, he doesn't blow
Thank
like.
you. You owe me a call.
That he do something like this.
So you owe me a call, but
that he wanna.
But it's already almost.
But yeah, but it's kind of like trying not to scream, so you gotta hold your body like that. That's what he does. It's not.
Okay, call me tomorrow when you can.
I will afterwards.
You know, like that. But is he learning to not be yelling, screaming? You gotta look at the positive too.
Who's that?
Pat Mandela of New York. You stay in New York, Pat?
Yeah, still in New York, getting ready to
All
go
right.
to Denver, Colorado.
Pat, how are you?
Pat, I thought you moved to California. You didn't move again?
No. My brother is in California. I'm
why
always
did I
there.
think you moved?
But I'm moving to Denver. Next week I'll be in Denver. I'll be living in Denver, Colorado.
Why? It's cold.
Yeah, no.
where-
My job
That way they
transferring me
legalize,
there.
Okay, all right.
But it's also cold in
Oh,
New York.